Welcome to this explainer. Today we're doing things a little differently. I'm tossing out the usual script. To actually get to the bottom of this whole cosmic monster mythos and the architecture of our own minds, I kinda need to speak to you from the shadows. So, yeah, I'm your host, but for this journey, I want you to think of me as the Sapphire Jester. We're gonna be tearing apart the concept of the High Cathedral. It's this massive, towering monument of cold, unforgiving stone and rigid laws. Right now, picture me looking down from its absolute highest spire, just watching humanity scurrying around inside, desperately trying to hide from the uncaring night outside. So let's jump right into this tale of rebellion.
Let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about it. What currency of obedience are you paying just to feel a little bit safe from the dark? You lock yourselves away in these tight mental cages. You live in a world obsessed with schedules, logic, and what the source text hilariously calls your approved civic hours. But I mean, what's the actual exchange rate there? You're paying this massive, heavy toll in sheer obedience, just so you don't have to look out into that terrifying dark. You literally build a cage of morality, slap some paint on it, and call it a sanctuary. Let's peel back the curtain and look at why you actually do this.
Section 1. The Fortress of Order.
Okay, so to really get the cathedral, we've got to understand the ancient, deep-seated terror that forced humanity to build the thing in the first place. Early on, the true world wasn't some peaceful, blooming garden. No, it was a terrifying, totally boundless sea of raw forces, like a chaotic storm of energy with no beginning and absolutely no end. Humanity was terrified of this primeval chaos, this monster of energy. So what did they do? They started building. But listen, the High Cathedral is not some holy place of connection. In this mythos, it's literally the superego made manifest. It's a monument to death. People didn't build these towering stone walls to create a bridge up to the heavens. No way. They built a barrier, a fortress of the mind. It's the spirit of the times, this thick psychic layer of rigid moral laws designed specifically so that no soul ever has a direct, unmediated experience of the divine. It exists purely to block out the ancient night and try to put a leash on the cosmos.
And here is where we hit the Great Divide. Inside those massive, suffocating stone walls, you have the world of arrangements. Everything in there is sanitized, it's supposedly safe, and frankly, it's boring. It's totally governed by logic, arbitrarily assigned values, and those perfectly structured, approved civic hours we talked about. But outside, outside is the Dionysian night. That's the primeval chaos, the terrifying, unblinking brilliance of the great star. You see, the cathedral is just this pathetic attempt to tame the untamable. It actually tries to domesticate infinity by wrapping it in red tape and moral panics.
Which brings us to Section 2, the Iron Cage. Let's talk about slave morality.
So let's head into the interior of this grand illusion. It is, honestly, profoundly claustrophobic in there. Pacing the floors of this mental prison is the high priest. He's fiercely guarding the theology of this iron cage, and he is just absolutely obsessed with classification. He spends his entire life drawing these arbitrary lines in the sand, separating the noble from the ignoble, the saint from the sinner. It's an architecture built entirely for control. The walls of this cage are deliberately thick, designed to completely muffle the wild, chaotic music of the source outside. It's a psychological shield against the Dionysian night. The people inside are so busy sweating over whether they're stamped as a saint or a sinner that they totally forget the actual universe outside even exists.
Safety is bought with the currency of obedience. That right there is the core transactional logic of the establishment. You hand over your true nature, your raw connection to the primal chaos, and in exchange, the high priest hands you a neat little label and a totally fake sense of security. So I have to ask you, looking at this, how thickly have you built your own walls? How much of your own obedience have you traded away just to shield yourself from the chaotic, brilliant source of life itself?
Section 3. The Literal Trespass, the Shadow Unleashed.
Because, look, every court, no matter how ridiculously rigid it is, has a parasite, me. And I decided I'd had absolutely enough of their little classifications. So I stole the high priest's secret instrument, and I sparked a grand rebellion. I didn't sit around and politely debate their theology. I became the Shadow Unleashed. Step 1, I refused to pray inside their cage. Step 2, I took my rebellion outside, and I started scaling the cold, hard stone spine of the cathedral's outer walls. And let me tell you, it was a gritty, visceral climb. I could literally feel the rough, freezing stone tearing at my fingers, scraping me raw. Step 3, as I climbed higher,
Dragging myself up the architecture of the superego, I began to literally shed my human skin. All those heavy limitations of mortal terror, of mortal classification, they just kind of slipped away into the freezing wind. And finally, step 4, transcending the world of arrangements completely. This wasn't just a metaphor, it was a literal, physical trespass against the mind's rigid theological structures.
By clawing my way up those walls, I became a monster to the modern ego. And you know why? Because I proved their mighty fortress was scalable. The high priest had been telling everyone for centuries that the walls were totally impenetrable, that the laws of the superego were absolute law. But there I was, a laughing parasite, pulling myself up the stones by my bleeding fingers, completely destroying their illusion of safety. I proved that their ultimate sanctuary was just a fragile, incredibly elaborate lie.
Section 4. Footstool to the Abyss. The Final Metamorphosis.
I want you to imagine the biting wind, the absolutely dizzying height, as I pull myself over the ledge onto the highest spire. I look up and I stare directly into the eye of Abraxas, the great star. This right here is the impartial horror of the unlegislated night. See, Abraxas doesn't care about the high priest's little rules. It's this massive cosmic force, completely unbound by pathetic human classifications like noble or ignoble. It shines its terrifying, blinding brilliance on the bloody tyrant and the weeping saint with the exact same intensity. It doesn't judge, it just is. It's the uncaring, infinite truth that the cathedral tried so desperately to hide from you.
And honestly, here is the ultimate punchline to the establishment's big joke. Right beneath my feet, the high cathedral underwent this massive metamorphosis. It was no longer a cage, it sure as hell wasn't a sanctuary. The highest, most sacred peak of the superego was reduced to a mere footstool. Think about that. I use the absolute pinnacle of human morality as nothing more than a launching pad to jump straight into the boundless, unlegislated night.
Let's map out this ultimate liberation, right? The death of the ego. It takes just one single second to refuse to pray, to just walk away and leave that cathedral floor behind. Then it takes one grueling, agonizing hour of bleeding on that cold stone spine to shed your socially constructed identity. But standing on the summit, using the superego as a stepping stone to actually touch the cosmic self, that takes one eternity. In that exact moment, beneath Abraxas, all identity just dissolves into this vast, impartial silence. It's a state that is simultaneously absolute nothingness and absolute, overwhelming fullness. All those heavy, rigid laws of the iron cage, they just evaporate into the infinite void.
Which brings us to the end of our ascent. I'm standing here grinning on the spire, suspended right over the abyss, finally completely free from the high priest's illusions. But what about you? Are you going to stay down there, shivering in the world of arrangements, desperately clutching your approved civic hours and your transactional little safety nets? Or do you actually have the courage to scale the cold stone of your own mind, step out onto the spire and stare directly into your own unlegislated night? The great star is waiting.